Some people believe the world can be fixed if we try harder. Some people believe the world exists to grind you down and then blame you for the dust you leave behind. Charles Dickens believes a human being can become more than the damage done to them. George Orwell believes a human being will be shaped by damage until nothing human remains. Dickens looks at suffering and says, "You are still a person. Even wounded, you can choose mercy." Orwell looks at suffering and says, "You are a resource. Your pain is how the system gets what it wants." If Dickens is the voice in your head that says, "You matter, and because you matter, you can lift someone else," then Orwell is the voice that answers, "You never mattered as an individual. You mattered as fuel." Dickens believes cruelty can break you but not erase you. Orwell believes the machinery of society can grind you into such fine powder that even your memories agree with their version of you. And here's the part nobody wants to admit. Both men are telling the truth. Both are describing a world that exists. One asks you to be human. One punishes you for trying. Dickens and Orwell walk through the same England. They see the same hunger, the same factories, the same disease and poverty. They step over the same bodies. They hear the same gears grinding people into fuel. But they do not tell the same story. Dickens sees individuals trapped in cruelty. Orwell sees cruelty perfected into a system. Dickens writes about villains. Orwell writes about machines. Dickens says, people fail, but they can be saved. Orwell says, people are trained to fail and then punished for failing. This isn't hope versus despair. It's moral agency versus structural power. Dickens is about what a person can do. Orwell is about what a system will do to you. Dickens did not write fairy tales. He wrote from the wound of his own childhood. At 12 years old, he was sent to a boot-blacking warehouse while his father rotted in debtor's prison. His childhood ended in a factory that treated him like a replaceable part. He lived the life he later gave to Oliver Twist. He knew the cold and the shame. He knew how quickly a child becomes invisible to respectable society. So when Dickens says, "No one is useless in this world who lightens the burden of another," he isn't being optimistic. He is being defiant. He is staring at starvation and homelessness and saying, "You are still capable of meaning." He is not promising success. He is promising dignity. Dickens believes redemption is personal, not systemic. One human being interrupts another human being's suffering. It is never abstract. It is never bureaucratic. It is never a policy or a reform. It is a human choosing to remain human. Have a heart that never hardens, and a temper that never tires, and a touch that never hurts. That isn't a quote about kindness. It is a command. Do not turn to stone. Dickens repeats this idea through his characters. Sidney Carton in A Tale of Two Cities is not redeemed. He redeems himself by sacrificing his life to save another man. There is no applause. There is no reward. It is humanity as a final act of defiance. Magwitch in Great Expectations is a criminal, discarded as trash. He still chooses to elevate Pip. Not because society permits it, not because the system rewards it. He chooses redemption without being given redemption. The villain becomes a guardian, not because society changes, but because he does. Uriah Heep weaponizes weakness. He uses humility as camouflage for predation. Dickens knows kindness is dangerous because manipulators will exploit it. Being human doesn't mean being stupid. Dickens sees cruelty spreading person to person like an infection. And what breaks the infection? One person refusing to pass it forward. He does not trust institutions. He barely trusts churches. He trusts individual conscience. In Dickens, People are breakable, selfish, capable of terrible things. But people can change. Not every time, not easily, but they can. His message is simple. Do not wait for the world to be good. Choose to be good anyway. Even in hell, one act of mercy can rewrite a life. That is his rebellion. Orwell's rebellion looks different. If Dickens is the voice asking you to save someone, Orwell is the voice asking why the system needed saving in the first place. George Orwell was not born in poverty. He was born inside the British Empire, not as the oppressed, as the oppressor. He served as a colonial police officer in Burma. His job was to enforce domination. He wasn't theorizing about injustice, he was administering it. He wrote, "I had already stopped feeling like an ordinary human being." That wasn't metaphor. That was a young man realizing he had become the boot. Then Orwell does something Dickens never imagined doing. He joins an anti-fascist militia in the Spanish Civil War. He gets shot in the throat. He comes back from the hospital and learns that his own faction is now being hunted by their supposed allies. Not the enemy, the people on his side. He watches propaganda fracture reality in real time. Dickens thought cruelty was human weakness. Orwell sees cruelty as political currency. This is where people love to use the line, "History is written by the winners." And they slap Orwell's name on it. It sounds like something he would say, so they pretend he did. But Orwell didn't write that, and he would have hated how simplistic it is. That line implies, whoever wins the war gets to tell the story. That's the polite, digestible version of oppression. The everybody's biased version. Orwell's actual worldview is much darker. In 1984, he writes, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." That isn't the winner telling their side. That is the winner deleting yours. It is not bias. It is annihilation. People attribute the softer line to Orwell because the real one implicates them. It demands that you admit you might already be living inside someone else's engineered reality. The fake quote makes oppression sound like bragging rights. The real quote makes oppression sound like architecture. Orwell then descends into the life of the poor, not just as a journalist observing, but as a man starving. He sleeps in doss houses. He scrubs kitchens. He begs. He freezes. He writes, "It is fatal to look hungry. It makes people want to kick you." Not because villains get joy from cruelty, but because weakness looks like an accusation. The starving body is an insult to the comfortable. Dickens asks who might save such a man. Orwell asks why anyone would bother. The core of Orwell is simple. Systems devour agency. In Dickens, suffering tests the soul. In Orwell, suffering erases it. Everyone quotes the boot on the face line. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face, forever. They think that's the worst line. It isn't. Winston says, "They can't get inside you." O'Brien replies, "That's what you think." That is Orwell. The goal is not obedience. It is loyalty, not conformity. Conversion. Once a system can modify loyalty, redemption becomes impossible because there is no self left to redeem. Dickens is about individuals saving each other. Orwell is about systems training individuals to destroy each other. Dickens sees souls. Orwell sees machinery. You are told to be kind and compassionate. Meanwhile, every institution you interact with punishes hesitation, vulnerability, and mercy. You are measured by metrics, conversions, compliance, attention. Mistakes are recorded. Preferences are stored. Your emotional responses are monetized. You treat workers like human beings and are replaced by someone who doesn't. You tell the truth and are drowned under curated lies. You extend mercy and are outcompeted by someone who doesn't hesitate. That isn't a villain. That is a mechanism. Dickens says one person can change your life. Orwell says one system can erase it, and they are both telling the truth. Dickens is a survival strategy for human-scale problems. Neighborhoods, workplaces, communities. You can redeem someone there. You can be saved by a stranger. Orwell is a survival strategy for machine-scale problems. Governments, corporations, surveillance, propaganda. In that world, you are not a character. You are a variable. Variables don't get redemption arcs. They get outcomes. Dickens tells you not to surrender your humanity. Orwell tells you not to surrender your autonomy. Dickens says save someone if you can. Orwell says destroy the machine that makes salvation impossible. You do not choose permanently between them. You choose based on the battlefield you are on. Sometimes the enemy is your own cruelty, and Dickens is right. Sometimes the enemy is the system that rewards cruelty, and Orwell is right. Kindness saves individuals. Resistance saves societies. So here is the question that matters. Do you live in a world where one act of mercy can change your life? Or in a world where a system can erase it? If you think mercy is enough, you are living with Dickens. If you think mercy is irrelevant, you are living with Orwell. The real nightmare is that you are expected to act like Dickens while being governed by Orwell. And every day you choose which side wins. You either help someone when there is no reward for doing so, or you look at someone suffering and ask why they didn't adapt faster. Both futures already exist. You reveal which one you believe in by how you treat the people around you when no one is watching. If you enjoyed this and want to see more essays like it, feel free to subscribe.